My name is Bill Rice. I am the owner and CEO of Kaleido. We're a digital agency and we focus specifically on lead generation.
Awesome. So I just watched your session and it was amazing here at WordCamp Minneapolis and learned a lot of things. How did you get involved with working with WordPress?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story, I guess. I ended up in WordPress as kind of a salvation move. My company originally, when I started it as a startup, we were actually a software development company. We had one of the early SaaS CRMs specifically for large mortgage call centers. And in 2007, a lot of people remember that as the financial crisis, but I always refer to it as an insider as the mortgage meltdown. And so all of our clients literally within a billing cycle, about 60 days, went out of business. So IndyMac Bank, American Home Mortgage, so all the big ones that if you were old enough to remember that, went out of business. Those were our clients. And so as hard as we tried to hang on, I eventually had to let my team go, my software engineers, and rebuild the business, and it left me trying to figure out how to create a website that spoke to what I was doing then, which I kind of switched from the sales CRM business because we knew a lot about internet leads. I said, okay, well, I'll do marketing. In the time of crisis, people will buy marketing. That's hope. They don't invest in sales. And so as we made that switch, I had to take over and rebuild the website. And so I was looking around. I was like, oh, this WordPress thing looks kind of easy. Sounded like Word. I knew how to use that. And then the business that came out of that, ultimately, which kind of made Kaleido what it is today, is at the time Studio Press, which now everybody knows is Genesis, had this deal where they would give you a developer's license, which was pretty cheap, and you would have all these themes, like 10 I think, and you could use them as many times as you wanted. And so I went out and I sold websites, redesigns, and I made sure that every client fit into one of these pre-done themes. And so that was the beginning of an agency. In fact, during that process, people said, are you an agency? And I'm like, oh, what's it? Oh yeah, I guess I'm an I didn't know what an agency was. And so so that's how we kind of became what we did. And we've been around for 15 years, so we slugged through it.
Wow. And how many people work for Kaleido?
So today we have 6 full-time on staff, and then we use a lot of contractors like most agencies.
Sure.
So we surge anywhere between 20 or so folks, between writers that we contract, some specialists around AdWords and PPC and stuff like that. So all in total, we have about 20 or so folks that work inside the agency.
And do you still focus in sort of like the real estate market, or do you have other?
It's kind of one of the focus areas. As most agencies, we start to kind of congregate into a few specific verticals, and so we love lending. We've got a long heritage in that. We understand the industry. We understand the customers that the businesses have, which is really important for lead generation. But then we also have law firms, so generally personal injury. And you'll hear a theme. So anybody that needs a lead or something for a salesperson to work on is kind of what we focus on. We accidentally tripped into high-end senior living communities and memory care facilities. So that's a vertical for us. And then the most exciting vertical is our emerging tech. So we work with a lot of funded startups, venture capital firms, and a lot of emerging tech. So artificial intelligence, virtual reality, some security companies, and so that's always fun because it's a new technology that we got to kind of figure out. So.
Interesting. And you mentioned to me that you had some background in security, right?
Yeah. So I'm old, but I started my career in the Air Force, and I did counterintelligence. And over time, I was in an area where we focused on the very early stages, it's like 94, 95, the very early stages of information warfare. And so at the time, and this always runs in a cycle, at the time we weren't kind of in any wars or conflicts, and so the actual DoD business was down, and the commercial sector, 94, 95, 96 was like booming.
Gotcha.
And so I essentially kind of got recruited out and worked for a lot of intelligence agencies. And then when I started working in the commercial sector, the closest equivalent was internet security. So I went over and worked for banks and did intrusion detection and firewalls and all that stuff, because I was kind of the closest translation to what I did in the military.
Wow, interesting. And things have really changed a lot probably in the last 20 years.
Yeah, that was a funny story I was actually telling you before. How I got out of internet security is, as I was working for these banks, there were some solutions coming into the market that were hardware solutions. And at the time, really, all you needed to do was fence, off your server, because everything was like your dedicated server. There was no concept of cloud. There were no devices other than desktops. So I saw these hardware solutions coming out. I'm like, man, we're going to be us software guys are going to be put out of business by all this hardware. So then I got out of security and went into marketing because of I like behavior type stuff. And lo and behold, like, devices proliferated, the cloud happened, and so security is like a hobby market. Actually, my two oldest sons are in computer science, and I'm like, you got to go into internet security.
Totally. I mean, just WordPress, just the fact that it's grown so much and is now powering more than a third, I think, of the internet. And with this new purchase of Tumblr, I'm sure those numbers are going to be even higher. So it's going to be even more and more of a target.
Oh, for sure.
I'm sure. So, because.
Yeah, that's where, we spend, as an agency, a lot of times we're hosting or helping to host the websites that we support. And that's what we've kind of seen. We've been on all the biggies, from Rackspace to, all the big hosting providers. But every time they get, prominent, then all the hackers go after them. And WordPress, we saw the same thing. And that's kind of why we've migrated to, WordPress specific environments, because it's a whole different complex animal. Yeah,
because then they can, securing the whole stack is a big part of that.
We don't want to be in that business. DevOps is hard.
Yeah,
so
totally.
We like smart people like you figuring that out, and we could make beautiful things and do the marketing campaigns.
Yeah, and figure out what makes people click on things, right? That's really where your expertise is, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's really, if there's a thread throughout my career, is just kind of the fascination with kind of online, because I was involved in the internet like super early, but just kind of watching online behavior and how people do things online, and it has changed significantly. We talked a lot in my presentation about web forms, and I remember the first bank that I worked with, we put on a web form to collect information about getting a loan. And again, this is like early 2000, and I remember we actually had instructions on how to fill out a web form, because in 2000, no one had ever seen a web form.
Oh, sure.
And now you put a web form and it's just like subconscious. People fill it out, so just silly things like that. But I'm always super fascinated by looking at the analytics and watching the customer behavior and kind of seeing how that changes and knowing how to get people to where they're trying to go is super fascinating.
Are you seeing any trends in that are interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in particular, because much like the conversation around internet security and the proliferation of devices, because people have so many devices and it's such a part of them, I think every time anybody encounters a website or a page that we create, you automatically have to assume that there's 3 or 4 other distractions on the phone, running in the background, alerts coming in, and so we're really aware of the fact that we are actually on the page itself trying to remove more distractions, because we already know, like, while you're on that page, you're probably going to get a couple of notifications, you're going to want to go check back on your Instagram, and so the less distractions or things that we can have for you to do on that page actually provides the clarity that allows for them to finish the action versus like, hey, this is too hard, let me go check Instagram,
Right.
So that's one trend that I think is really important, is removing distractions on the pages that we're building. And then I think the other thing that I talk about a lot is, because so much of our behavior now in interacting with websites is happening on mobile phones, we've noticed that a lot of times and we were talking a little bit off camera about navigation.
Yeah.
People aren't using kind of the navigation. Instead, they're actually scrolling down the page, looking for everything that's there, and then going back to where they want to be or what they found interesting. So much like you would on your phone, if you go to a page on your phone, if you notice, you probably, now that I say it, you'll probably notice it more. Most of the time what you do is you hit the page and then you'll scroll all the way to the bottom to see quickly everything there, and then you'll move back to what you're actually interested in.
So they're trying to basically gather in or sort of get a vision of the entire page, and then whatever caught their attention, they scroll back to that?
Yep, even on desktop.
Really?
Even with your mouse.
Interesting.
So we use some tools like Hotch and Crazy Egg that will actually show you that movement, and we're seeing that. So whereas before all the hotspots would be kind of at the top, now what we're actually seeing is the hotspots tend to be at the top and the bottom, and then somewhere, depending on how you design the page, wherever that kind of call to action or that button is usually the next hotspot.
Gotcha, interesting. So. Yeah, because I remember, I'm old like you, so I've been around for a while too. And I remember like the first heat maps that I saw of a website, you'd have like your website and like the top left was where everybody was sort of concentrating their attention, and now it's not working that way anymore.
Yeah, you'll still see a little bit of that L, but it's definitely spreading out for sure.
Okay.
For sure. Like used to, you would never see anybody kind of get, the heat maps would never really drift below the fold, so to speak. But now you'll see heat all the way along the page. So yeah, it's super fascinating.
So that really kind of opens it up to marketers like yourself to try new things within the context of the entire page rather than concentrating on the top or the left or wherever that main nav is.
Yeah, so most of what we're doing today is at the top of the page, we're trying to address the traffic that's coming in there that just already knows they want to contact you or already knows what they're looking for, and we try to solve the need there. And then the rest of the page, we try to support the researcher or reinforce whatever the sale is up here. So if we need to convince you more to contact us or to sign up for a demo, or we need to convince you more to actually pay for something, we're going to do that down the page. It also serves the researcher that needs to discover more. So that's kind of how we manage most of our page strategies.
You're probably, like most agencies, extremely busy. You have a lot of different customers demanding attention.
Sure.
How do you manage those sort of process flows so that your agency is productive across so many different needs?
Yeah, so we're structured. We probably don't do things too much differently than other agencies, but we're structured in such a way that everybody has a dedicated account manager. And so their primary mission is really customer service and customer experience, and a little bit of project management. Then we have specialists. So those account managers, other than maybe having a little strategic expertise, so they know how to kind of wire everything together that we're working on for you. Most of the execution happens with specialists. And then we have another layer, which is usually myself, because we're not huge, myself or there's two other people that kind of fill this role, where there's a strategy layer where we're actually looking across all of the clients to look for strategic opportunities, and we're doing a lot of the strategy sessions, and then out of that comes a plan, and the account managers execute the plan. So that's how we kind of do that. And then the account managers, we don't overwhelm them. Generally, they're not handling more than 3 clients, which is pretty manageable.
Nice.
And then again, they're not doing most of the execution. They're just making sure trains run on time and things get done.
That's always good.
Yeah.
Always a positive.
Customer service is definitely their focus.
Yeah, that's great. That's always a big part of being successful.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that relationship is everything.
So does your agency work a lot with the WordPress community? How does that benefit you?
Yeah, so from our standpoint, a lot of it's just give back, because the WordPress has been so much to us. Until probably the last year, 100% of all of our websites have gone on to WordPress. Now that we've doing more in the emerging tech, we get some emerging tech companies that want to play with some other different CMSs, so we're learning to support that. But over the 15 years that we've been doing this, WordPress is like, I mean, to have an open source platform that we can, that they give to us to sell value on top of is huge. So we like to give back for that. So we don't get a lot of business out of WordCamps, but the WordPress community is awesome. We really look at it more as a give back, learning and meeting some great talent. I mean, we're always, we're looking, we outsource or contract writers, we surge with developers, we surge with designers, and so we meet some awesome people that are passionate, understand the platform, and so there's a little bit of advantage there, but it's it's definitely not a revenue generator. It's certainly more of a passion and a give back.
Yeah. So. And you're speaking again at another WordCamp soon?
Yeah, I'm actually doing New York City here coming up in September. So.
Oh, excellent. That's just a few weeks away.
Yeah, it is a few weeks away. So
awesome, great.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, like I said, I've got so much appreciation for what WordPress has done for us, but the people are just awesome. Everybody loves what they're doing here.
Is it the same talk you just gave here, or are you going to do a different one?
Yeah, this one has changed a little bit, but it's the same topic area.
Okay.
So it'll be very similar, but I usually try to kind of tweak it. If we learn things, I'll add some examples. I try to definitely give some specific examples whenever I can. So.
Well, I will give my 2 cents that this was an excellent talk. My little Wordfence notebook got filled up pretty quickly because I learned a lot from you. So I'm really. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that I haven't asked you about?
No, I mean, it's like I said, it's a fun talk. We've just kind of been introduced to Wordfence. We do. We're talking about getting more involved again with the government, and we do banking and stuff like that. So what you guys do in security, just like hosting, we don't want to do DevOps. So as we get that requirement, I'm sure we'll be looking to work with you guys. And so, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's just fun to be a part of WordPress in the community.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sitting down with me and having this talk. And
yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Thank you.